AITA for pushing my lonely friend into a fake relationship that broke him? I met him back in middle school, and I'll be honest, from day one, I didn't like him. He was the kind of kid who stood out in all the wrong ways. Awkward, too many questions, socially clumsy in ways that made everyone uncomfortable. Where other kids laughed and played, he seemed to hover on the edges, desperate to be included, and yet never quite fitting in. I tried to avoid him at first. To me, he was that weird kid everyone knew but no one wanted to be close to. He'd say things that made people shift in their seats, ask questions that felt too personal, act in ways that left others rolling their eyes. He embarrassed me, even when I wasn't the one he was talking to. But somehow, despite all of that, he stuck around. He found ways to slip into my circle, to sit next to me at lunch, to start conversations that I never asked for. And over time, something strange happened. I tolerated him. Then, eventually, I even called him a friend. Not because I suddenly saw him differently, but because he just didn't go away. He wore me down with his persistence, his neediness, his absolute refusal to let go. And as much as I wanted to shake him off, a part of me also felt responsible for him. He didn't have many friends. Actually, he barely had any. By high school, he was that kid sitting alone at lunch, walking alone in the hallways, scrolling on his phone to pretend he didn't care. And I guess my guilt kicked in. I couldn't stand to see someone so utterly isolated, so I kept him in my orbit. Not out of love, not even out of loyalty, but out of pity. And maybe that was the first mistake. Because pity is not the same as friendship. And deep down, I think I always knew that. As the years went on, something changed between us. He stopped being just that awkward kid hovering at the edge of my life and started becoming, well, my responsibility. At least, that's how it felt. He trusted me. Too much, maybe. Where everyone else avoided him, I was the one he gravitated toward. And because I tolerated him, he opened up in ways he never did with anyone else. That I remember the first time he confessed something personal. It was late at night. We were messaging back and forth, and out of nowhere he admitted that he hated himself. He said he felt like he didn't belong anywhere, that no one really cared if he existed. His words were raw, unfiltered, the kind of thing most people would hide. That I cringed when I read it. Not because I didn't understand pain, but because it felt like a weight I didn't want to carry. I wasn't equipped to be someone's lifeline. I didn't want to be the person he leaned on so heavily. So what did I do? I ignored his messages, pretended I didn't see them, hoped he'd get the hint. But he didn't. He never did. Instead, he kept coming back, kept telling me about his insecurities, his failures, his loneliness. He told me about his crushes that went nowhere, about how invisible he felt in school, about how much it hurt to watch everyone else pair off while he sat on the sidelines. He poured his heart out to me in ways that were messy, uncomfortable, and sometimes downright exhausting. And I played along. Sometimes I comforted him. Sometimes I rolled my eyes and gave half-hearted replies. Sometimes I laughed at his expense when talking to other friends, because being associated with him made me feel embarrassed. But the truth was, I couldn't cut him off. There was something about his vulnerability that kept me tethered, like I was the only one standing between him and complete isolation. Did I pity him? Yes. Did I secretly despise him sometimes? Also yes. And that combination was toxic, because while he was spilling his soul to me, I wasn't really his friend in the way he thought I was. That I was holding his secrets, but I wasn't holding his heart carefully. I was keeping him close, but only close enough for my own comfort. Looking back now, I think this was where the damage truly began. Because when someone hands you their pain, you either nurture it with care or you crush it. And I wasn't gentle. I was the wrong person to trust. And yet, he kept trusting me anyway. High school is brutal when you don't fit in. By the time we hit those years, everyone had already found their place. The athletes, the theater kids, the overachievers, even the outcasts had their little cliques. And then there was him. He didn't belong anywhere. I could see it every time we walked into the cafeteria. Groups of friends clustered together, laughing, leaning in close, sharing inside jokes. And then him, walking past every table like a ghost until finally sitting alone, tray untouched, eyes glued to his phone like that glowing screen could distract him from reality. And yet, no matter how invisible he seemed to everyone else, he never gave up on me. He still sat by me when he got the chance, still texted me at night, still poured out his thoughts about how he wanted, more than anything, to be loved that I knew he was lonely. I knew he was desperate. And I also knew, deep down, that I didn't see him the way he saw me. To me, he was that weird kid who had latched on and never let go. But to him, I think I was the closest thing he had to someone who truly mattered. Then came my cousin. She was the opposite of him in every way, confident, attractive, popular without even trying. People liked being around her. She had that effortless charisma that made her shine in any room. And that's when the idea took root. IT wasn't some grand scheme at first, just a spark of a thought that flickered into my head one day while listening to him drone on about how he'd never find love. I thought, what if I gave him a taste of it, even if it wasn't real? At the time, I justified it to myself as harmless, maybe even helpful. He wanted affection so badly, and I knew my cousin wouldn't take him seriously. But if she played along, he'd feel wanted, even if just for a little while. Of course, it wasn't really about helping him. If I'm honest, it was about me. About my boredom, my cruelty, my need to control the one person who had given me his trust. So I talked to my cousin. I told her about him, about how desperate he was, how awkward, how clueless when it came to relationships. I framed it like a joke. Just play along, I said. Let him think he's got a chance. It'll be funny. She laughed. She didn't take him seriously either. And to my shame, she agreed. The next time we hung out, I encouraged him to go for it. You should talk to her, I said casually, like I wasn't planting the seed. She might actually like you. You never know. His face lit up in a way I'll never forget. For once, he looked hopeful, like maybe his life wasn't destined to be one long stretch of loneliness. He believed me. He believed her. And for the first time in years, he walked around like someone who mattered. For a while it worked. They texted. They hung out. He told me about every conversation, every little moment, like he had struck gold. He said things like, I think she's the one, and I've never felt this way before. His words were overflowing with joy, and I pretended to cheer him on, but behind his back, I laughed. With my cousin, with other friends, even by myself. Because I knew the truth. I knew it was all a lie, and the lie stretched on for months. She played along, amused by his awkward affection. He gave her everything: attention, admiration, hope, and she gave him just enough back to keep him hooked, until, inevitably, she got bored. I saw it coming. The way her texts got shorter. The way her patience wore thin when he showed up to see her. And then, one day, she cut him off completely. No explanation, no gentle letdown, just silence. And him? He crumbled. For weeks, he wandered the halls like a shadow of himself. He didn't text me as much. He didn't smile. He looked like he'd lost something vital, something he couldn't get back. I watched him fall apart, and instead of feeling guilty, I told myself he'd get over it. That heartbreak was part of growing up, but in the pit of my stomach, I knew the truth. I had set him up to fail. I had dangled love in front of him like a cruel experiment, knowing it would end in pain. And when he finally hit the ground, I was the one who had pushed him. After my cousin cut him off, it was like watching someone lose all their color. He stopped smiling in the hallways. His shoulders, already a little hunched, curved in even more, like he was trying to fold himself out of sight. He barely talked. And when he did, his voice sounded empty, drained of whatever fragile hope he'd been clinging to. I'd never seen him like that before. For so long, he'd been awkward and needy, yes, but still full of this relentless energy. Like a dog that keeps coming back no matter how many times you push it away. But now, he looked broken, and I knew why. He thought he had found love. He thought, for once in his life, someone had finally chosen him. And then, just like that, it was gone. Cut off like it never mattered. And the worst part? I had engineered it. I had set the whole thing in motion, but I didn't say that out loud. Instead, I told myself that heartbreak was part of life, that he'd learn from it, grow from it. I told myself I wasn't responsible, even though deep down I knew I was. For weeks, he wandered like a ghost. People noticed, too. Some would whisper, "What happened to him?" Others didn't even care enough to ask. And me? I stayed silent, watching the wreckage I had created. Then, slowly, something shifted. He started going to the gym. At first, it seemed like a distraction, a way to get out of his head, to focus on something other than the hollow ache in his chest. But soon, it became more than that. I'd see him after school, walking out in sweat-soaked clothes, his face red and tired but determined. At first, he was clumsy, weak, lifting weights that looked too heavy for his skinny frame. People laughed. I laughed too. But he didn't stop. Day after day, week after week, he kept showing up, and little by little, it started to show. His posture straightened. His arms filled out. His face looked sharper, stronger. He wasn't just the awkward outcast anymore. He was changing. I'll admit it. Part of me was surprised. Another part of me was unsettled, because I had gotten used to him being weak, dependent, easy to dismiss. Watching him grow, watching him find even a sliver of confidence, felt like losing control over the role I played in his life. But he didn't stop talking to me. If anything, he confided even more. He told me how the gym was helping him, how the pain in his muscles was better than the pain in his heart. He talked about new routines, about wanting to reinvent himself, about finally feeling like maybe, just maybe, he wasn't doomed to be invisible forever, and I nodded. I listened. I played the part of the supportive friend. But inside, I was conflicted, because while he was picking up the pieces of his shattered heart, I knew the truth. I was the one who had shattered it in the first place. And no matter how strong he got, no matter how many weights he lifted or miles he ran, that fact wasn't going away. I had broken him. And I was still the one he trusted to help put him back together. By the time he'd been hitting the gym for a few months, there was a visible difference in him. He wasn't suddenly the most popular guy in school, but people noticed. Teachers complimented his focus. A few classmates, the same ones who once rolled their eyes at him, now gave him nods of acknowledgement. Even strangers seemed to treat him with a bit more respect. And yet, inside, he was still the same, still searching for that one person who would make him feel like he mattered. That's when she came in. She was a friend of mine. Let's call her Anna. She wasn't my best friend, but we were close enough to share jokes, swap homework, hang out between classes. She was sweet, smart, and genuinely kind. And unlike most people, she actually gave him some of her time. I noticed it almost immediately. The way his eyes followed her when she walked into the room. The way his texts to me started including her name more and more. Anna laughed at my joke today. Anna said she liked my hoodie. Do you think Anna might like me? It was obvious. He was falling for her. And a part of me, the part that had just watched him get torn apart by my cousin, should have stepped in, should have told him to slow down, to be careful, to maybe not pin all his hopes on one person again. But I didn't. Instead, I let it happen. And, worse, I confided in Anna about it. One day, between classes, I told her, he's got a crush on you. She rolled her eyes and sighed. Yeah, I know. He's sweet, but it's just too much sometimes. We talk more. And eventually, our conversation shifted from sympathy to annoyance. She admitted he made her uncomfortable at times with how persistent he was. I admitted how exhausting it was to be the one he leaned on all the time. And that's when the old pattern repeated itself. Instead of helping him, instead of protecting him from another heartbreak, I joined in the silent agreement. We'd both pull away. At first, it was subtle. She stopped answering his messages as quickly. I stopped encouraging him when he brought her up, but he didn't notice. He was blinded by the glow of hope, the same glow he had with my cousin. He started bonding with her more. Or at least, he thought he was. He'd tell me about little things they shared, how she laughed at his stories, how she seemed to understand him. To him, it was progress. To us, it was one-sided, a slow climb toward another inevitable fall. And the more he leaned into her, the more she leaned out. Until finally, she reached her breaking point. She told me she couldn't do it anymore. That his attention was too much, too heavy. That she needed space. And I agreed with her. I didn't fight for him. I didn't defend him. I didn't remind her that he'd already been through enough. Because in that moment, my exhaustion outweighed my pity. And once again, I chose to step back instead of step up. That he didn't see it yet. He still thought he had a chance. But I knew what was coming. And I knew that when it happened, when she finally cut him off, he'd look to me again, the one person who was supposed to have his back. And I was already planning to let him down. It was only a matter of time before he noticed. For weeks, Anna had been pulling away. Her replies to his messages, once polite and lighthearted, became shorter. LOL. Yeah. Busy RN. Where once she might have humored him with a full conversation, now she left him on scene more often than not. And yet, he clung to hope. He told me, she's probably just stressed. She's got a lot going on. I know she likes me. I can feel it. I didn't correct him. I didn't tell him that behind the scenes, Anna had already confessed to me she couldn't handle his attention anymore, that she found his persistence overwhelming, suffocating even. Instead, I just nodded, murmuring something noncommittal, because part of me didn't want to deal with the fallout. Part of me was tired of carrying his weight, and part of me, the cruel part, wanted to watch what would happen when his illusion finally shattered. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. One afternoon after school, I saw him waiting for her near her locker. His face was pale, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, his body tense like a spring about to snap. He had that look in his eyes, desperate, tired, and ready for answers. When she walked up, he stepped forward and asked, "Why are you ignoring me?" It wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive. But it was raw. His voice cracked, betraying the storm he'd been holding inside. Anna froze. She looked at him with wide eyes, then glanced around, clearly uncomfortable that people might be watching. She mumbled something like, "I've just been busy." But he pressed again. "No, it's more than that. You don't talk to me anymore. You don't laugh at my jokes. Just tell me if you don't want me around." I stood nearby, pretending to dig through my backpack, but really listening to every word. I could feel the tension, the ache in his voice, the way his entire fragile world was teetering on the edge of collapse. Anna didn't answer right away. She looked trapped, caught between honesty and avoidance. And in that frozen silence, that unbearable pause where the truth almost surfaced, his phone buzzed that he pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and I watched as his entire body crumpled at a message. A few short words. His grandfather had passed away. The timing was almost cruel, like the universe itself had decided to kick him when he was already on his knees, his eyes filled with tears. He muttered something I couldn't hear and stumbled back, away from Anna, away from me, away from everything. His shoulders shook as he walked quickly down the hall, disappearing into the crowd before either of us could say a word. Anna turned to me, her face pale. "Oh my God, what do I do? Should I tell him? Should I wait?" And I, in my infinite selfishness, said the worst thing possible. "Just wait. He's got too much going on right now." That night, while he was mourning one of the few people in his life who had probably ever truly loved him, I sent him a message. Not of comfort, not of support, but of betrayal. That I told him I couldn't be his friend anymore, that I told myself it was for his own good, that he was too much, too heavy, too needy. I told myself I was setting boundaries, protecting my own sanity. But deep down, I knew the truth. I was abandoning him when he needed me the most. And the guilt of that decision is something that still follows me to this day. The days after his grandfather's death were some of the hardest to watch. And, I'll admit, some of the hardest for me to live with. He came back to school looking like a shell of himself. His clothes hung loosely on him, like he'd forgotten how to care about his appearance. His eyes were bloodshot, rimmed with the kind of exhaustion that comes from crying yourself to sleep and then waking up to the same grief. He barely spoke, barely moved. It was as if someone had hit pause on his life, and he was just dragging his body through the motions, and I wasn't there for him. Every time I saw him, a sick wave of guilt washed over me, because I knew that while he was carrying the weight of losing his grandfather, he was also carrying the sting of losing me and Anna at the exact same time. In one cruel twist of fate, the few fragile pillars he had left in his life collapsed all at once. People whispered about him in the hallways. He looked so bad. What happened to him? Some said he was being dramatic. Others shrugged it off entirely. But I knew the truth of what had been taken from him. And the worst part? I wasn't just a bystander. I was part of the reason his world was crumbling. At night, I thought about texting him, about saying something kind, even if it was small. But every time I opened the chat, my fingers froze. Because what could I possibly say? "Sorry I abandoned you on the same night you lost your grandfather?" There were no words that could erase that betrayal. So I said nothing. Anna was just as silent. She confided in me once, weeks later, that she had thought about reaching out but didn't know how. "It just felt like the worst timing," she said. And I nodded, but deep down, I knew we had both taken the easy way out. That he started spending even more time at the gym, hours on end, lifting, running, pushing himself until his body shook. To outsiders, it looked like determination. To me, it looked like desperation, like he was punishing himself, or maybe trying to sweat out all the pain. And yet, despite all of it, he still lingered at the edges of my life. He'd glance at me in the halls, like he wanted to say something, but the words never came. And I, coward that I was, always looked away. It's strange. For years, he had been the one clinging to me, the one who refused to let go. And now, when he finally needed me most, I was the one who let go first. In my quiet moments, I started to wonder, had I ruined him? Was I the reason he was walking around like a ghost? Or had he always been destined to break, and I had just sped up the process? Either way, I couldn't escape the truth. He was utterly, completely alone, and I had helped put him there. At first, I thought the gym was just his escape, a place to run from his grief, to drown his loneliness in sweat and aching muscles. But slowly, I started to realize it was becoming something else entirely. It was becoming his rebirth, the boy who once slouched through the hallways, who whispered his words like he was afraid they'd disappear before anyone heard them, was beginning to stand taller. His face, once pale and tired, started to show sharp angles. His arms grew stronger, his chest broader. He didn't just look different, he carried himself differently. And people noticed. The same classmates who had once mocked him now gave him nods of respect. Some of the girls who had overlooked him for years started to giggle when he walked by, whispering behind their hands. Even the teachers seemed to hold him in higher regard, calling on him more often, complimenting his focus. For the first time, he wasn't invisible. That I should have been happy for him. After all, wasn't this what I always said I wanted? For him to grow, to stop clinging to me, to find his own way? But instead, I felt something else. That I felt uneasy, because the truth was, I had always been in control. He needed me. He leaned on me. And even when I resented it, it gave me power. I was the gatekeeper of his confidence, the one person he trusted above all else. Now, that power was slipping away. That he didn't text me as much anymore. When he did, it wasn't to pour out his pain, but to casually mention his progress at the gym or the new people he was starting to talk to. There was a lightness in his messages that hadn't been there before, like he was slowly realizing he didn't need me the way he once did. And that terrified me. That I caught myself watching him from a distance, studying the way others reacted to him now. He was still awkward, still quirky, still a little different. But people were starting to see past it. He was no longer the weird kid who clung to me out of desperation. He was becoming his own person. And for the first time, I felt a pang of something I didn't expect. Jealousy. Because if he no longer needed me, then what was I to him? Anna noticed it too. She mentioned one day that he seemed more confident, that he wasn't texting her as much either. It's like he's finally moving on, she said. That I smiled and agreed. But inside, I felt a knot tightening in my chest. That I had built my identity around being the one person he couldn't let go of. And now, piece by piece, he was proving that he could. Not because of me, but in spite of me. That's when it hit me. Maybe I hadn't ruined him completely. Maybe, by breaking him, I had accidentally given him the chance to rebuild himself stronger than before. And that thought scared me more than anything. Because if he could survive losing me, if he could grow beyond me, then maybe I was never as important as I thought. It didn't happen overnight. At first, the changes were small, subtle things that only someone like me, who had known him for years, would notice. He stopped sitting with me at lunch. Not abruptly, not with anger, but gradually, like he was drifting to a different orbit. One day, he sat with some kids from the gym. Another day with classmates from his new study group. Soon enough, I realized his tray rarely landed near mine anymore. His texts slowed too. Where once he had flooded me with late-night confessions, rambling paragraphs of thoughts and feelings, now I got short updates. Good workout today. Got an A on my test. Sometimes even silence. At first, I told myself it was nothing. That he'd come back. That I was still the one person he trusted most. But weeks turned into months, and the distance between us only grew wider. That I watched him from afar, surrounded by people who once wouldn't have given him the time of day. They laughed with him now, patted him on the back, treated him like he belonged, and it ate at me because I remembered the nights he had cried to me, the times he had clung to me when no one else would listen, the secrets he had spilled, the pain he had laid bare. I had been his anchor when he was drowning. And now he was swimming without me. Anna noticed too. She said, half joking, looks like he doesn't need us anymore. But to me, it wasn't a joke. It was a knife twisting in my chest. Because It wasn't just that he didn't need us. It was that he didn't even seem to want us, that I tried to convince myself that this was a good thing, that he deserved happiness, deserved to find his place in the world. And deep down, I knew that was true. But another part of me, the selfish part, the part one don't like admitting exists, hated it. Because if he could move on from me, if he could build a life without me in it, then what did that say about me? Maybe I wasn't his anchor after all. Maybe I was just a crutch he finally learned to walk without. And the more I thought about it, the heavier the guilt became. Because I couldn't escape the truth. I hadn't just been a bad friend. I had been a cruel one. I had manipulated him, betrayed him, abandoned him in his darkest moment. And yet, somehow, he was still finding a way forward. Without me, the distance between us wasn't just physical. It was emotional, spiritual, permanent. And as I watched him slip further and further away, I realized something that chilled me to my core, that I had lost him. Not because he left me, but because I had pushed him away. And now, there was no going back. Sometimes I lie awake at night replaying it all in my head. The first time I met him and dismissed him as that weird kid. The way I let his trust grow while secretly resenting him. The cruel trick with my cousin. The silence when Anna began to pull away. The night his grandfather died, when instead of comforting him, I abandoned him too. Each memory hits like a stone, piling on top of me until I feel crushed under the weight of them. Because the truth is, I wasn't his friend. Not really. I was someone who pretended to care just enough to keep him around, while mocking him behind his back. I was someone who used his vulnerability as entertainment. Someone who betrayed him over and over, until there was nothing left between us but ashes. And yet, in spite of all of that, he survived, and I still see him sometimes, walking through the halls with his new circle of friends. He looks stronger now, more confident, like he finally belongs somewhere. He laughs in ways I never saw him laugh before. He carries himself like a person who has rebuilt from the ground up, and when I see him like that, I feel two things at once: pride and shame. Pride, because despite everything I did to him, he managed to claw his way out of the darkness. Shame, because I know I was one of the reasons he fell into it in the first place. That I wonder if he ever thinks about me. If he remembers the nights we stayed up talking, the secrets he shared, the way he once trusted me more than anyone else. Or if, in his mind, I've already faded into nothing, just another ghost from a past life he's glad to have escaped. Part of me hopes he's forgotten me. Part of me fears he hasn't. And so I turn here, to strangers on the internet, because I can't carry this question alone anymore. Was I trying to help him, in some twisted way? Or was I just cruel? Did I ruin his life? Or did I give him the push he needed to grow? I don't know. All I know is that I betrayed him again and again, until there was nothing left to betray. So tell me. Reddit? AITA? Thank you for watching this story on True Tales Hub. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our next story. That we post new tales twice a day, and each one comes with unexpected twists you won't see coming.